Alright, so this is hopefully gonna be a part of a bigger video with like general advice for people questioning, but yeah, maybe not, we'll see. Anyway, what I wanted to say is about like, yeah, if you're questioning what types of things to kind of look out for, and what to maybe ask yourself, like basically, if you are someone who, I'm gonna take a certain experience I had as an example. If you're someone who has the feeling that their dysphoria, to a degree or fully, is dependent on people's visions of you, and I'm gonna take an example here. It's not very the best one, but not really the best example, but you probably will have heard of it. It's the sort of debate thingy that was going on, where people will often use as an example. Oh, let's say you're on an island all alone, and there's no one else. Then would you still, like, what would you change about your body, and what would you not change about your body? And maybe even take it a step further and go, what would I change about my body if I were there now? And what would I change, or would I have changed about my body had I been there at the beginning when I started realizing I was trans, or in the past, or maybe even, depending on how long you've had thoughts about this, or depending on how far back you can go in the sort of uncomfortable experiences that you've had about your body, sort of the things that you might label as an indicator of you being trans, or potentially label as such. And look at those moments and sort of, for each segment of your past and of the current day, ask yourself, what would I have changed about myself, and what would I change about myself now? Because the thing is, like, I remember walking and talking to a friend that I had at university right before I started my transition, when I was already kind of socially transitioning, but not really medically yet. And he asked me how I knew that I was trans, and what it really meant to me, and what it entailed on a sort of physical level, on a social level. And I can't really recreate the conversation itself because it was all on a whim, and I was still in a situation where, not saying I don't have that now, but I was maybe even more anxious because I was insecure and I didn't know him that well, so, I tend to talk about things with someone in these social situations and then sort of forget everything as soon as the conversation is over because I was so focused on the stress. Now, what I do remember distinctly, however, is the thought in my head afterwards about what my answer would be to that question. And my answer would have been that there wasn't much about my body I would have changed. There's very little about my body I would have changed, actually. If not nothing at all, because to me, the thing that mattered was being seen as not a woman. Not even a man, specifically not a woman. And not being referred to as a woman. And not wanting any of those things that it entailed and it implied. And I remember getting really angry at my dad for, like, at some point giving me, like, we were having dessert and he handed me a piece of cake and he said, ladies first, and I literally almost yelled at him for that. And he was like, I don't understand, like, is it wrong? What's wrong about saying that? And then I had to come up with some bullshit excuse about why it made me so emotional. Of course it just did, because I was like, oh god, you just gendered me. And also I think it's kind of a stupid thing, because it's like, oh, I'm women friendly because I give you the piece of cake first because you're my daughter, and it's like, you should just do that for anyone, man, because that's being nice. Like, but now it would be like, that would just make me shrug and think, oh, you fool, at most. But it made me really angry at the point. It's kind of a culmination of things. However, back to the question. If you feel like these things, like there's things that don't matter to you that much, but do to others, or if there are things that you can actually pinpoint when they started shifting, it's important to ask yourself what's more important. It's important to ask yourself, is it possible for me as a person, and not just ask, but actually try to find if it is possible for you as a person to adapt the way you think of yourself and the way that you relate to what people say and to what people think, if you even should relate to that because you don't really know what they think. And yeah, maybe you can change that. Maybe you can adapt in such a way that it will be easier to deal with and even function better than transitioning, because especially if it's very important to you and almost to, like, mostly important to you, that it's all about the way you're being perceived, you're essentially not doing it for yourself. You're not doing it because you look in and say there's something innate to me that cannot change, that I can only influence in this specific way. You're essentially saying I'm doing something because I want something from people that I'm not getting and that I want to alter. That's kind of like, I'm not saying it has to necessarily be something that will tear you down, or it has to necessarily something that you will incredibly regret later, but it can be, and there have been people that have regretted it in that way, and that do regret it in that way, and I wish that they would have not immediately went down that path. Maybe, you know, God, I don't know. Like, I'm not saying this as sort of like giant no and like warning sign of like trying to scare people off about transition, but please consider this, because it's not, I don't think it's as easy as just going, oh, what do I like and what do I not like, and I'm just gonna take, you know, this, go down this certain path that will be just as much of a choice as not doing anything, and that will be something that might have effects on the rest of your life as well, you know? Like, it is a big choice, it's a pretty big thing, so you should probably consider something like that. Because, like, for me, it's too early to assess all of this completely accurately, but like, yeah, I don't experience my own changes necessarily that horrible or something that I necessarily regret. Also, I feel like there's a lot of things that aren't that amazingly different for me. I've said before, my facial shape and everything is pretty much still the way it was before even. My voice is the main thing that is really deep, and I don't really know what my body's gonna do once I'm off of tea. Today is my first day off, so we'll see what changes in the future and how. But yeah, just that thing, be wary of where it's coming from, and look for where it's coming from and what that could mean and what that could do for you. Because I do think it's, if you can, a more sustainable thing to try to change the way you see things rather than change for the sake of other people or other people's opinions, or you being able to deal with other people's opinions. Because being trans, stealth or not, is also going to have an effect on the way that you perceive yourself and perceive other people's opinions, and it's also just generally going to have an effect on your mental health as well. So weigh your options and introspect.